What's good, everyone? It's your boy Nati with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMVSportsZone. And I got a guy on the channel today, Washington Football Weekly, the 50th edition of Washington Football Weekly. He doesn't need any introduction. But Noah, why don't you just introduce yourself to the people out there who might not know who you are?
What's up, everyone? Like Nati mentioned, thanks for having me on the live stream. My name is Noah. I'm the CEO of Sporty Eye. You've seen a bunch of my fantasy videos, expanding anywhere from Wizards to the Washington Capitals, all the way to the Washington football team and the Ravens. So, going to bring some of my real-world football expertise to this stream, and let's get started for sure.
All right, Chris. There's Sports 6 already spewing the nonsense right here at the first comment. What's up, Noah? Goats, Brown Boy Sports Talk for sure. Abdullah, man. Abdullah is pumping out content for like what, 3 channels now?
I know. And he's causing arguments among Cowboy fans on TikTok. So that's a dub.
Ooh, I'm not even on TikTok, so I haven't seen that. You're gonna have to tell me this off camera, bro. But all right, so first question. We're smiling, right? We gotta transition into frowns. Because we're gonna be talking about the NFL and them not budging on releasing the 650,000 plus emails from their investigation into the Washington football team's workplace culture. What are your thoughts on all that? And what are your thoughts on Raiders owner Mark Davis specifically being all for the release while all the owners are, they're a part of this whole gentleman's club, right? Where they're trying to protect their own and stuff. Like, what are your thoughts on that dynamic as well?
I think that's not a surprise, amongst, NFL players and NBA players, for example, they consider themselves a brotherhood of fraternity. The owners are in their separate category. A lot of times there are tensions between owners and players. We've seen in the past, I think it's crazy how people quickly forget, for example, the Houston Texans owner has said multiple very inappropriate comments, including one literally 2 days ago about in regards to COVID-19. I'm not going to go into that, but that's the point. They want to protect their own. And it's really interesting because the Jaguars owner, Salman Khan, has talked about that kind of closed doors, having a hush-hush mentality amongst the owners and the management in the NFL. And it was met with silence. And that should be really indicative of how secretive they want to be, because there's a lot of dirt that is going to come out. And I'm not surprised if Snyder and a bunch of people on the Washington football team organization is indicted in those type of things, because we're seeing in the NHL, for example, Stan Bowman, that terrible situation with the whole, I don't know how to put this lightly, but some bad stuff that's going around on the Blackhawks organization. Yeah. It's happening with another team. So it's really being exposed in all professional sports. And we're seeing that it's a type of mentality that we're going to have to address. So I'm not surprised if there's going to be a lot of resistance, but eventually something will come out.
Yeah, and Khan, his son being the AEW CEO, I don't know if you know, but Khan, I think he's the only minority owner in the NFL right now, if I'm not mistaken. Either the only or one of the only.
He currently is the only. He's currently the only minority owner in the NFL.
Yeah. My thoughts on the whole situation. I mean, it's not surprising. The NFL, like I said earlier, likes to protect its own. It's the complete opposite of the NBA. The NBA is a forward-thinking league, a very progressive league. The NFL is very much, stuck in their ways. And to be honest, though, it's worked when it comes to their bottom line. But when it comes to the culture in the NFL, obviously there's a lot that needs to be changed that hasn't been changed, and I don't think it's going to change in the future. And I also don't think, as this is my prediction here, I don't think the NFL is going to budge and release all of those emails. They might release a couple, like they did with the Gruden situation, but I don't think they're going to release all the emails. I don't think they're going to give a lot of the women and a lot of like the general public what they want when it comes to the release of the emails. But I want to ask you this, because obviously it's most pertinent to the situation with our football team. Do you think in the end Dan Snyder will get away scot-free once again, or do you think he will get punished for the emails and for the whole workplace culture that has been established in DC over his tenure?
It remains to be seen, but in my opinion, I think that there will be large repercussions because in these classic type of white collar crime situations, they always have the scapegoat. In the NBA was Donald Sterling becoming the scapegoat for actually a multitude of problems. People don't realize there were a lot of other incidences in the NBA amongst other team owners and other management. But Donald Sterling was kind of the go-to guy, like, oh, he's that old racist guy. It's all on him somehow. Everybody else is scot-free. Snyder's already been in hot water with the name change, in my opinion, disgraceful quote unquote honoring of Sean Taylor, as well as now this workplace thing. He'll be the scapegoat. Another thing is for behind the scenes for the live stream, the politics of the league. He isn't favored a lot amongst the other owners. If you remember, Robert Kraft had a lot of the other owners come in to defend him when that whole scandal came out. But with Snyder, there's a lot of infighting in the organization, and there has been no other major NFL management or ownership that has come on the defense of Snyder. So I have a high, strong feeling that he could become the scapegoat. And then that leads into the rumors. Will Jeff Bezos buy the team? He's increasing his presence in DC. I hope he doesn't buy the team, but honestly, maybe he'll be better than Snyder. But
prediction here, I don't think Dan Snyder is going anywhere. I think I mean he's I don't know, man. He always, no matter what comes his way, he always evades whatever it is, right? Like he always finds a way to recover and ultimately retain his ownership here in DC, and I think it's just going to continue. I want to play this fun exercise though, because I've been thinking about this a little bit. The thread, actually, I don't know if you've seen it, Noah, but the thread by a Dan Snyder parody account basically went over 20 years of Dan Snyder's egregious mistakes while running the Washington football team, and the person who made like the thread did not go into any of the on the field stuff, right? Because that was too easy, but went to all the off the field stuff and the basically plunging this organization, this once proud organization, into the ground. All you guys, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go check it out on Twitter. I might post it in the description a little bit later, but that got me thinking. Let's play this fun exercise. Name me one thing. Name me one thing you appreciate from Dan Snyder's tenure in DC.
I'm not. I gotta see the thread for this myself, but honestly, whatever I'm gonna find, I'm gonna agree with. I can't think honestly of a single positive thing that Snyder really has brought. You can't, because the thing is, like, you can't give him credit for any of the good things that have happened. The RG3, Alfred Morris years, the Clinton Portis, London Fletcher. Those are all on the general management. I mean, if anyone remembers, Snyder's opinion, Snyder did try to play a bigger general manager role in the early 2000s. I mean, the one thing was like he did want Shanahan as the head coach, and it worked out well, I guess, for a short period of time until RG3 was driven into the ground. But
for a short period, 1 year,
yeah, for a single year. And so you really can't. I mean, the hate that Snyder gets is deserved. It's not like a lot of times like people just boo the commissioner, boo the owner, or whatever. Like Snyder really has brought, I think, the Washington football team franchise to his knees. Like we should be so much better than we are. We're one of the most heavily funded teams in the league. Like we can, the funding that the team gets and the revenue it gets, we've built a new stadium. We can change the practice field whenever we want. How do we have all these funds, bring in so much talent, and still be such an incompetent franchise? And sometimes it just comes down to Snyder. And it's just Snyder is, I think he's the worst. Honestly, hot take, he's the worst sports franchise owner, not only in the NFL, I think in all of professional sports. I truly believe he's the worst owner. And there's a lot of bad ones, but I think he's the worst.
That's not even a hot take. Literally, earlier this morning, I tweeted out, "This is the worst owner in all of sports," because it was off of. I don't know if you saw. I forgot his name. He was a former GM in the NFL, former GM for the Packers. He basically tweeted a conversation that his friend and Dan Snyder had like years ago, and this is where things started to turn because he grew up a Washington Redskins fan and stuff. But like after hearing this conversation, he just ended his fandom altogether. And it was basically this woman, his friend. Basically, her kids were at Dan Snyder's house. Like, basically had a play date with Dan Snyder's kids and stuff. This was like a long time ago. And basically, at the end of the play date, she was gonna bring her kids home, right? And they were leaving the house or mansion or whatever, wherever estate, I guess, that he lives in.
Compound.
Yeah, compound. And basically on our way out, she was like, thank you, Dan. This was a great time for the kids and stuff. We appreciate it. And he was like, it's Mr. Snyder. That was his response. Bro, he is a true slime ball, bro. To answer the question though, the one thing that I appreciate from Dan Snyder, the only thing that I appreciate from Dan Snyder is, well, I'll say two things. One, if he has a favorite player, he's going to do everything in his power to keep that favorite player in DC. And oftentimes it's been a bad thing, but when you think about it, if there's a favorite player that's a very good player, maybe down the line, good thing. The other thing, he's a fan. I mean, that doesn't really mean much because now I feel like now he's gotten to the point where he cares more about his bottom line than his fandom. But let's do the more fun thing. Talk about the least favorite thing from Dan Snyder's tenure. And I know there's a lot, but you got to pick one.
I can't name a specific thing, but I just think
let's do this off the field and on the field. One off the field thing, one on the field thing to make things a little bit easier.
I know the stream wants me to say the least favorite thing off the field is the name change, but
I feel like I don't know if people agree with that, but there's some. But yeah.
Yeah, I think for me that's not the worst thing he's done off the field. I really think that something specific, but I think the worst thing he's done off the field is just moving the practice facilities away from Northern Virginia. I think that was one of the worst ideas that he possibly could have done, because
like for Richmond, for training camp
as well as for the outside practice facilities. Like he moved it it used to be closer to Arlington, but now it's been moved. I really think that from a perspective from like Northern Virginia, DMV, the Washington football team is supposed to represent the entire community. And I really think it was like a heart ripped out from the Virginia community for what? For nothing. It wasn't for a bottom line. It wasn't for the benefit of the football team. It was purely a detriment to the fans and just a convenience for himself. It was a selfish move. So that to me was the worst off the field move he did. The worst on the field was, I think, the way that they handled the Kirk Cousins situation. People forget Kirk
really
so quickly. I think that was handled terribly because Kirk really found his own in Washington, and everyone at the time, I think he caved into the fan pressure too much. I really think that we could at least try to have made a bridge deal for Kirk, shift them all for assets. But I mean, we are in a situation where I hate to say it, but I'd rather have Kirk than Heineke. I'd rather have Kirk than anybody who's started for the past 3-4 seasons. So I think that to me, that's the worst. I could say RG3, but I think Shanahan was the main culprit behind RG3's career being ruined. But Snyder had a bigger part in the Kirk Cousins fiasco or whatever that was. And yeah, I mean, we haven't had as much as everyone hates Captain Kirk, we haven't had a quarterback of his caliber since he left, frankly.
So there's a lot to unpack there. First thing I want to say, also,
I saw that pause. I knew you were gonna say something.
I had this comment up for literally like 2 minutes now. We didn't even address it. What is up? How are you doing today? I'm doing well. How are you doing, Noah?
I'm doing great as well.
All right. So, okay. Again, so many things to unpack. With the Kirk Cousins situation, yes, they screwed it over. 2 franchise tags. I mean, we're going through the same situation with Brandon Sheriff right now. But Kirk Cousins isn't all that. I've never been. I mean, there was a point in time when I was a youngin, right? Freshman year, sophomore year of high school. I thought Kirk Cousins was the magic man, bro. I thought he was amazing. Then I started to get even like a year or two older, and I realized no, he's not. And look what he's done in Minnesota. He's won one playoff game. I watched that playoff game. That was a push-off by Kyle Rudolph that the Vikings should not have won in overtime. That's another story for another day. Outside of that game, they have been trashed with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. Or I believe mediocre, like straight up 500 with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, much like he was here in DC. So I don't think we actually lost much with Kirk Cousins. I do think we did lose much with not recovering from Kirk Cousins. And when I say that, I mean like adequately replacing Kirk Cousins, right? Like it's one thing to have a Kirk Cousins just leave, right? It's another thing to not find a suitable replacement, right? Over the last couple of years. I mean, Dwayne Haskins was supposed to be the answer. Obviously, he was not the answer.
Yeah.
Taylor Heineke offered some magic. He is not the answer. I mean, so on and so forth, right? So I think if we're going to talk about like contractual screw up, I think Trent Williams was a much bigger screw up than Kirk Cousins. I mean, they didn't even treat his cancer, bro. Like he almost died. And he was one of the best. He's still one of the best left tackles of all time, bro. Forget this generation of all time. I'm saying it. Like, and that's the whole situation. I know we talked about this a little bit off camera, but yeah, I feel like that if you're gonna talk about contractual situation, that would be the biggest one, at least in the last 5-6 years. But my two things. So off the field, I would just say, I mean, I know this is like low-hanging fruit, but the sexual harassment allegations, the workplace culture, even though that's not very like specific, I just think everything that's been revealed and all the lawsuits that are underway and might be pending. Yeah, that's the whole situation. I think on the field situation though that I critique Dan Snyder most for is letting Brucifer Allen run the team for 10 years, bro. Brucifer Allen, the guy that's literally in the center of all of these allegations right now, in the center of all this investigation that the NFL is doing of the team right now, bro. We knew. I think we all knew as a fan base. This is the one thing that I think this fan base was on top of years ago, like from the very beginning. We all knew Bruce Allen was not a great president of this Washington football team, of the Washington Redskins back then. We knew he was a slime ball, much like Dan Snyder. That's probably why Dan Snyder kept him around, to be honest. But to have him run this organization alongside Dan into the ground for 10 years, bro, that is beyond me, bro. I remember in middle school talking about this guy as someone that Washington should fire, bro, in middle school. Ended up not happening until what? Sophomore year of college. Like that was unacceptable, bro. But yeah, shout out Hawk TV, shout out to DMVSportsZone 50th installment. Yes, this is once again the 50th installment of Washington Football Weekly. Thank you guys for joining. Dave and DC. I'll mention this. This isn't something that I prepared, but I think I said this on the post-game recap for the Packers game. I literally going through the process of making this channel, right? This journey. I made it in April of 2020. I started in April 2020. While making it, I thought that point would be the rock bottom of the Washington football team. Things would only go up from there based off the 3-13 season that we just had, right? I thought, Ron Rivera was coming in, like a new head coach, just a new culture, Jason Wright, all this. Well, not Jason Wright at the time, but a new culture in general, right? Bruce Allen was no longer the president. And now, I was wrong. I mean, we saw a positive sign in the NFC East Division champions, right, from last year, even though it was 7-9. We saw that playoff success. But I mean, we're starting to fall into our old ways, and I think, although I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, I think this team will recover a little bit as the season goes along. I just think this is an underwhelming season overall, up until now. Oh my gosh, we didn't even mention this guy. Mr. I'm not going to get up from the ground after I attempt to sack. Yeah, Albert Haynesworth, bro. I mean,
the worst free agent signing of all time. I think, honestly.
$100 million, bro. $100 million. Adam Archuleta as well. Safety, bro. I think we gave him like Landon Collins money back when that was
twice as valuable because
exactly.
Salary cap wasn't as high back then.
Oh my, bro. We have so much to talk about. Let's talk about some other things. Let's talk about a positive thing on the field for the Washington football team. This 2-5 team. What are your thoughts on Terry McLaurin's performance this far in the season? Do you think he's a top 10 receiver?
Oh, I gotta be objective. I gotta be objective. Uh, from a fantasy perspective, I think Terry is a top 10 receiver. He's very consistent. From a real world perspective, I put him in the top 10, but he'd be like that borderline. He's like borderline 9 through 11. Like he could be argued out of the list, argued on the list. Mainly not from fault of his own. Like it's really hard to tell. Like it's a similar situation with the young DeAndre Hopkins. Hey, you read my mind.
Yeah.
Is that if Terry is a truly elite receiver, like truly, like he can be an all-pro one day, multi-time Pro Bowler, then he needs to show he can thrive in any situation. And I think he has done that. However, compared to the young Hopkins, Hopkins made the leap. He made the leap. But I don't think – go ahead.
To be fair, though, Hopkins is top of the top. He's like top 3.
Yes,
He's been top 3 for a long time. I don't think we're saying that Terry belongs in that category or even will get to that category in the future. But I think in terms of top 10, like, we're not just considering Hopkins. We're considering, I don't know, the Calvin. Well, not really Calvin really right now, but like,
Cooper Kupp, I think, is a good comparison.
Top 10 receivers. Huh?
I think Cooper Kupp is comparable because I think Cooper Kupp has broken into the top 10 discussion. He was always like that good, that good receiver that was on the Rams, but he wasn't even like the best receiver. Woods was the better receiver, but Kupp made the leap, and now he's definitely a top 10 receiver. Yeah. But yeah, I think the reason I mentioned that was just to set the point that Terry is on the borderline of that ranking, and I don't think we'll ever get past that hump. He will be a good receiver. Can he be a Pro Bowler? I think he can be a Pro Bowler. Will he have, I think he can have a couple 1,000-yard seasons. He absolutely has the potential. But I think as Washington football team fans, we need to temper our expectations. A couple things that doesn't indicate he can ever, I think, get past, the bottom tier of the bottom tier of top 10 is still elite. So, from an elite receiver to like an absolute top 5 receiver, he lacks the analytics in terms of the mid to short route game. And what that's the thing is that like a lot of times we want to see him go deep. We want to see all the different routes, but he's really struggles when he is heavily targeted. So when people start to actually, bring a safety help over, maybe chip a linebacker when he goes out to his route, Terry, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen him do any of those things. He hasn't had that moment where he can break through against a tough defense like that and prove himself. And part of that is the quarterback play. I mean, we've had some atrocious quarterbacks, arguably worse than the Hopkins situation, because Hopkins still has Chubb and he was a Pro Bowler. He wasn't elite, but he was a Pro Bowler. So, I mean, it's a wait and see. Terry's still young, but so for now, I'm gonna put him at that 9 through 11 range, but kind of going a little off topic. I need to see more. I believe he can do more. I think that bringing in Samuel will help, but I can't put him anything further than 9, and I don't think he will get past 9 next season, or even the season after that, unless we really fix the organization. It comes down to what we talked about in the beginning. And we're holding back our talented players. I mean, it's painful to see him wasting away with the football team.
Yeah. Curtis Samuel can't stay on the field, bro. So I'm not counting on Curtis Samuel, to be honest, which is sad because we just dished out $12-13 million a year for him. But I will say this. I feel like the only way we're really going to see this pains me to say, because I just don't think we're going to get our quarterback situation fixed, maybe like at least for the rest of the season. We'll see in the future. I think the surefire way to see Terry McLaurin be the top 5 receiver that I believe he can be is for him to leave a free agency and to go to a team like the Packers or a team like, I mean, maybe Tom Brady might be playing until he's 50 years old. Who knows? The Bucks, the Seahawks, if Russell Wilson stays, wherever Deshaun Watson ends up with his allegations and lawsuits and all that cleared up, of course. but I feel like that's like the only surefire way. But I mean, I think he's played very well. You talk about Cooper Kupp, everybody's gonna be like, "What do you mean he's only top 10 receiver? He has to be top 2. Look at his stats. He has 800 yards." Guys, we're considering everything, right? Like Noah's considering everything. I'm considering everything. I agree with you. I think he just broke his way into the top 10. But I also think Terry McLaurin, I agree with you. I think he's a borderline top 10 receiver right now. I mean, he's put up 40 catches, 550 yards, and 4 touchdowns to start the season. I think those are top 10 numbers. So and he's doing it like you said earlier. Double team, triple team. Curtis Samuel's not there. Even Cam Sims is not there. De'Ami Brown wasn't there last couple of weeks because of an injury. So I think Terry McLaurin definitely deserves a spot in the top 10 receivers right now. And I think he definitely deserves some Pro Bowl consideration. I think we'll see that as the season goes along, which is kind of crazy because he wasn't even ranked the top 100 player by the NFL players this year under guys like Corey Davis and Cole Beasley, Mr. I'm not taking the vaccine, Cole Beasley. Okay. How about some other parts of this team that are positives, right? We're starting off the show talking about after the negatives, we're starting off the on-the-field talk with some positives. What are your thoughts on the whole offensive line thus far? Like, they've only given up 10 sacks in 7 games. What are your thoughts on the offensive line and their performance thus far?
Yeah, in terms of the offensive line, I think you got to take it with a grain of salt because, first of all, we've been missing Scherf, our best lineman, and I really doubt he's going to come back. I really think he's gone. So we see – I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. I mean, we'll see how they handle it. I mean, but like we said before –
well, after this season, for sure, I agree with you. I'm just saying, like, for the rest of this season, I don't know.
Oh, for the rest of this season, I mean, obviously he'll be a key part of our line. Yeah. But I think the part of the analytics look good on paper. We don't give a lot of sacks. We're ranked in around the middle in terms of pass blocking grade as well as run blocking grade. But I think another part of that is because we are really dampening our offense in order to protect the QB. And I don't know if that remains to be seen. Is it because of the offensive line or is it because of the lack of quarterback talent back there? Heineke's good, but he doesn't have a cannon of an arm. He prefers short routes. And that's why you see McKissick is getting so many receptions because a combination
slipping a bit too. Yeah.
Exactly. Like it's very deceptive because yes, the line is not giving out a lot of sacks, but Heineke is also throwing it within seconds because we're doing, I swear, every other play, a slant route, screen, some deceivery. We don't have the athletes to do that. I mean, McKissick is good, but but with Gibson being like, he's running on one leg. And Rivera, completely going back on what he said. He said, I mean, in practice and in preseason, they were using Gibson like McCaffrey. But instead, they choose to use McKissick. They use McKissick in situations where they need to use Gibson. They are underutilizing our best position group. I think our best position groups are running back and tight end. And here we are. Gibson is hobbling on one leg. Either just not let him play and let him rest up or use him properly. I mean, they're using him like a goal line back. I mean, you don't bring your future franchise running back and treat him like I don't know. Treat him like a third down back, in my opinion.
To be fair, I feel like the whole perception around Antonio Gibson from last week's game would have changed if he just stayed upright and actually ran and did not slip. Because I don't know if you noticed, there was this one run that potentially had been like for the distance, like a touchdown, like 50 plus yards. He just slipped. I mean, he's gotten it from JD McSlipping, as someone coined on Twitter. But no, I agree with you. I think the offensive line has looked good. Samuel Cosme looks like he's going to be a beast. Chase Roulier is one of the most underrated centers in the league. Brandon Sheriff has been injured, but he's still an all-pro. He was our first all-pro since 1996 for a reason. And you also got good pieces like Eric Flowers and Wes Schweitzer as well. I'm not a huge fan of Charles Leno. I don't like Charles Leno. Like in terms of his production, he seems like a good person, charitable person. But I don't know. I don't trust him as their starting left tackle, and I think they're just grooming Samuel Cosme to ultimately be that down the line. But the point here, you mentioned the running game. Noah, do you think we're not running well due to running back or offensive line should be drafted stud running back? No, I think Gibson can be our stud running back. He just needs to be healthy, honestly. Like I think he has all the talent in the world. Something that I mentioned, I was trying to be one of the first when I said this, but he has fumbling issues. Like I can't tell you the number of times I literally yell to the screen when watching the games, saying, "Gibson, hold it high and tight." Every single time he holds the ball like a loaf of bread, and you cannot have that happen. You cannot have that happen. And I think, fingers crossed, it'll get fixed. Usually that's happened with some of the best running backs in the league. It happened with Ezekiel Elliott last year. It's happened with some other guys. So I think that's an easily fixable thing. But I think that's his second biggest concern. First being obviously his health, right? And just getting healthy. But I personally think it's just been our running backs slipping. To be honest, our running backs slipping, both figuratively and literally. And I don't think our offensive line is too much to blame. Samuel Cosme is one of the best running blocking one of the best running blocking offensive linemen in the league. He was also graded very highly by PFF. Wes Schweitzer was also graded very highly by PFF in terms of run blocking. So I don't think it's necessarily our offensive line. I think it's just our running backs not necessarily also finding the right holes. Like I think there was a highlight clip on Twitter that was posted where Antonio Gibson was just not finding the right holes. And this is a problem that we've seen since last year, right? Because this is a second official year as a running back, right? So like, he's still trying to find his way, and I think he'll get there, but I think his health is the biggest issue right now.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I mean, yeah, people forget that Antonio Gibson literally wasn't a running back until he got to Washington football team camp and they converted him. But that's the thing. Like, I mean, we could put the blame on everybody. We can put the blame on the line. We can blame. I mean, the line is not to blame. Gibson isn't to blame. McKissick isn't to blame. Maybe the real question is the offensive playbook. I mean, the offensive playbook is just atrocious. You can see when we start.
Is it though, or is it just the quarterback doesn't find the open players? Because I've seen film, bro. Like I don't know. It seems like Scott Turner is doing an okay job, but I just feel like the quarterback, like whether it be Alex Smith, Taylor Heineke, Kyle Allen, Dwayne Haskins, it really doesn't matter. Like they're just not finding the open receiver.
I think that the playbook lacks a lot of lack of creativity. I think Turner comes from literally the Norv Turner line of offensive playbooks, and it's a little outdated. It's a little dated, and they try to adapt it. They try to combine a lot of different play styles to try to make things work, but that just comes to the point where the coaches have to have the ability to adapt the playbook, and I don't think the playbook that we have now fits well with our team, particularly because the expectation now, unfortunately, the expectation now is that we're going to trail for most of the game. How do we close the gap? Not by running 1,005-yard slants, and that's the thing. They put McKissick and Gibson out there together, actually utilize them. Don't use McKissick as a decoy and then have some inside zone run. And then that's the thing. Gibson isn't the type of player that is a north and south runner. He likes to run to the side. He's a more vertical runner. He's a patient runner too, if you give him the chance. I think a big part of him missing the holes is people not realizing that Gibson does best when he has the field, spreads the field, and he can run to the outside, cut back inside. And I think we started abandoning that a lot. We removed, Burton came in last year late as that fullback, and we had a bunch of H-backs as well. Tight ends, Logan Thomas was playing H-back, was opening holes. And that's the thing is like we need to start doing that again. But for some reason we abandoned that completely and then expect Gibson to still be the same guy. When you have a young developing running back, you can't expect him to make some of these quick north to south runs, especially in inside zone. Inside zone is a complicated run scheme. Gibson doesn't have the experience for that. And our offensive line is also relatively young. Like you said, we're throwing it into a complicated playbook that simply they can't execute. So how do you change that? How do you fix that? You create a better spread offense. You allow them to run across the field, let them be athletes. Because a lot of times you can make mistakes on the line. You can make mistakes on your route. But if you have spread the field, you have more options, which is why a lot of, that's why the Rams did so well transitioning. They always got new young guys Van Jefferson coming in right now. Cubs having that breakout year because the spread offense allows for more creativity from its players. So I don't know. I think that this comes down to the fact that our coaching hasn't been that great this year.
We saw Sean McVay and what he did, him working his magic. I think we were the second ranked pass offense, if I'm not mistaken, for 1 year of the Kirk Cousins era, because I mean we obviously had weapons, Sean Jackson, Jared Garcon and stuff, and Jordan Reed, but I mean it was also a lot of guys being open. Like how many times did we see open receivers flying down the field when Sean McVay was here in DC? And I think, although I don't necessarily like Kirk Cousins, and I think he's fake. I still have to give him credit because he's at least a decent quarterback, and we haven't had that. So I feel like if we get a decent quarterback, if we get an above average quarterback, I think we should be okay. But I think we should also strive for better though than an above average quarterback. Because we already had Kirk Cousins experience here in DC, and we didn't really have too many playoff wins to show for it. So I think hopefully we get a guy in the draft or maybe Aaron Rodgers. I feel like that ship has already sailed.
That ship has already sailed.
Yeah.
After week 3, I think Rodgers crossed Washington off his list.
Yeah, with our defense, man. But I do want to ask you. So okay, let me ask you this first before we're getting to the defensive line. Do you think Washington should bring in Kerryon Johnson or a free agent running back with the injuries that they're dealing with?
Oh. See, I think Kerryon Johnson, that's an interesting name that you bring up. There are a couple other free agent running backs that are kind of floating there. But Kerryon Johnson, I think, is a good pick. I believe last time I checked, he was on a practice squad, so we can snag him whenever we want. But he is what Gibson is not. He is much more of a north-south runner. So maybe that does become a good fit. You never know. Relatively young as well. Go ahead.
Do you think he should take a roster spot away from Patterson, or not a roster spot, but a spot on the depth chart, like from Patterson?
You know what? I don't. Jared Patterson's become a fan favorite. Mighty Mouse. Like was killing it in college. That's tough because Kerryon Johnson does fit the north to south runner build way better. He's like 5'11", 6 feet. Almost 230. He's huge. And he has proven that there's flashes of potential when he was with the Lions before DeAndre Swift literally ended his career. But the point is, I think he could be a good addition, but at what cost, like you said? Because for a fact if we bring Jared Patterson down the practice squad, he's gone. There's no way he's gonna stay on that practice squad without getting snagged off of waivers. So what do we do? What other position do we cut? What other position do we trim down? But that's the thing is like in the end of the day, Kerryon Johnson doesn't offer like enough to change anything for the Washington football team season. Like, could he be a decent goal line back or take some carries away from Gibson? But what does that do? I mean, that delays the inevitable. Maybe that contributes to some more scoring, but that's not the solution. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. It's cool for a second, but it doesn't really offer that much. And like I said, Kerryon Johnson's gotten so much slower. There's a big reason why he got let go by the Lions, because he lost a lot of his explosiveness, and that's a problem with north-south running backs. Their shelf life is very short. King Henry is the one exception. Maybe Steven Jackson back in Adrian Peterson. Well, Adrian Peterson, he can do everything. He's at another level. But Steven Jackson for the Rams back in the day. But is Kerryon Johnson Steven Jackson? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I don't think we should add anybody because we sacrifice too much for Kerryon Johnson. Like, come on, he hasn't run a 4.6 40 since like 2019. He is actually on the last legs of his career, unfortunately. He's very young. Very similar to Jordan Howard, Jay Ajayi. These guys, they have explosive couple years, but it just takes a toll on the body. Not worth dropping Jared Patterson for.
Okay. I agree with you. I don't think we should bring him in unless we're dealing with like some serious like injury issues that might leave Antonio Gibson out of this week's game. Because we have Jared Patterson, we should probably use him, right? Like he made the roster, DMV kid, super young guy. I think we should use him. He showed some burst in the preseason, so I think if we're Antonio Gibson is healthy enough to be on the active roster, then I don't think we should bring Aaron Johnson in. But if he's not, maybe for depth purposes, we do that. Let me ask you about the defensive line. What are your thoughts on their performance thus far in the season? And when I say that, I'm obviously including Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, even guys like Matt Ioannidis, Deron Payne. What are your thoughts on the defensive line?
Yeah, I'll give the defensive line like a B, maybe B minus, because from a statistical standpoint, unfortunately, we rank in the bottom half because of QB hits, QB pressure, sacks, rushing yards, passing yards. You can't put on the defensive line, so I'm taking that out. But rushing yards, rushing touchdowns allowed.
Well, they're not getting to the quarterback enough, though. You could say that, right? Like that's
you could
there's
say
only
that.
so much a cornerback can do, right?
That's true. Well, but I think that like I said, it ties into us ranking in the bottom half of the league in QB sacks, QB hurries, QB hits. I know Montez Sweat went viral because he flew in the air and did his thing, but that's a clip. The entire season, it's been meh. That's the thing, is that this defense thrives and lives and dies on his defensive line. So that's the thing. The reason the Washington football team defense was good last year is the defensive line ranked in the top 5 in every category that matters. Like I said, sacks, QB hits, hurries, rushing yards allowed, rushing touchdowns allowed. They were top 5 in everything. So that's why our defense was better. But if our defense, slips down, like I'm not saying they're not in the bottom of the league as a term of a defensive line. They're in the bottom half. But look at the overall defense, and now we're in literally the bottom 5. We almost flipped. We literally flipped from a single year. So it's I don't want to go as far as saying the defensive line has been a disappointment. I mean, they've just been average. I think that just shows greater problems in our secondary. But, and then also the Chase Young hasn't really stepped up at all. He just kind of existed. I think Jonathan Allen has played well. I think he's actually played better than last year, weirdly enough.
Top three interior defensive lineman in this league.
He's showing. I remember we mentioned, Terry, his breakout needs to be, when he gets double teamed, makes a big play. Jonathan Allen, I think he will be a perennial all-pro defensive tackle because he's getting double teamed and he's making the plays, especially in the run, which I remember originally, coming out of Alabama, a lot of people thought he was more of a 3-4 defensive end, but he can play nose, he can play defensive tackle in as a 3-tech and a 4-3 defense. So he's played well individually. Sweat, disappointing. I'm going to say he's even I really think he's disappointing because the expectations were higher. And the line is healthy. There's no reason that he should not be.
He has 4 sacks on the season, though. I think we should point our disappointment at Chase Young's direction. He has 1.5 sacks through 7 games as the quote-unquote generational talent.
I think Chase Young is I think I even said this last year when we were talking about the preseason. He's very similar to Jadeveon Clowney. I think he's more of a unfortunately
those are the comparisons that no fan liked. Yeah.
I think the reality is we kind of took the rose-colored glasses off and said, okay, who is Chase Young as a player? And he's similar to Jadeveon Clowney, plays an outside linebacker role, he can play defensive end, a great run stopper, can get to the quarterback and stop running backs physical, but he's not everyone last year thought he would be Ryan Kerrigan 2.0, like a true get to the quarterback. Yeah, I think Sweat is like Kerrigan, but Young, that's the thing. That's why I think I'm going to give the defensive line a B minus because we got to temper expectations, and we have bright spots. Like I said, Jonathan Allen, Sweat's been decent, but I think the main thing is we got to realize that Chase Young, more than likely, unfortunately, is closer to a Jadeveon Clowney than he is to a Myles Garrett. Of course, he's very, it's very early on in his career. I know that. But the metrics point to him being more of a run stopper, not a true 4-3 defensive end, get to the quarterback, 10 to 15 sack guy. Those are hard to come by, of course. And Chase Young, I don't think is one of them. I really think that. Unfortunate, but I know we got to temper some expectations.
Yeah. Even though I projected going into the season, I project the 2021 season, I projected that Chase Young was gonna be better than Montez Sweat this year. I've been saying since Chase Young has been drafted, that Montez Sweat is the better defensive lineman right now. And I'm gonna continue to say that. Montez Sweat 4 sacks through 7 games. He hasn't been like otherworldly, but I mean he's been very solid, and I think he's gonna get double-digit sacks this year. And he does force some pressure, some pass deflection. So I think he's a pretty good defensive end. I would have liked Brian Burns in that draft, but obviously we try to go 2 for 1 in getting a quarterback and Montez Sweat. So that's why we didn't end up, 15 overall, Brian Burns. But that's another situation, right? For another day.
Pain.
Chase Young, major disappointment. 1.5 sacks, 7 games. I know everybody's like, oh, it's not only sacks, but bro, at the end of the day, if you are Chase Young, if you are a generational talent, number 2 overall pick in the draft, number 2 overall, not number 2 draft pick for Washington, number 2 overall draft pick in the NFL draft, right? Like you need to put up sacks. You need to put up sacks. That's what counts the most, because that means that you're getting to the quarterback on a consistent basis, right? The pressures are there. I don't know if you saw there was a stat out there. I think it was by PFF. The pressures are there, so I think he can get it. He can get things turned around rather quickly. And I think he's going to have a pretty productive close of the season. But I don't think he's going to get to double-digit sacks, which a lot of fans were expecting. So I think he's been a disappointment. Jonathan Allen, though, you know this, Noah. Since literally last year when we were making fantasy videos, bro, I've been on the Jonathan Allen boat. I was one of those people earlier this offseason, March, April, was saying Jonathan Allen should get paid, and he will get paid $17 to $18 million per year on his next contract. He's getting paid $18 million per year. I was getting roasted on Twitter, bro. Well, I wouldn't say roasted. I'm not gonna go there, but I was like, people were curious, like, why? Like, what do you mean? He's not putting up sacks. He only had 1.5 sacks last year. He's not all that. Like, forget those PFF ratings. Forget the pass rushes. The pressures that he puts up. Forget all that. Forget the fact that he lets other defensive linemen on the team obviously ultimately get sacks, right? Forget all that. Bro, he's been our best defensive lineman for the last 3 or 4 years, bro. I don't care if that's a hot take. He's been our best defensive lineman. He's a great run blocker, which we've known since his college days, since his high school days, to be honest, at Stonebridge, right, in Ashburn. Pass rush, he's gotten better every single year. He had that 1 year where he had 8 sacks, but I don't even think that year was as good as this year, bro. Like, he already has 5 sacks through 7 games, right? He's on pace for what? Over 12 sacks as an interior defensive lineman. He's not even playing DN anymore. He's playing interior defensive line.
In a 4-3 as well, so he's a true D tackle.
That's why I'm saying he's a top 3, top 4 defensive tackle in this league right now. Like, he's playing at that level. So I have huge faith in Jonathan Allen. I think he's going to continue. And he's also doing this after he just got paid in the offseason. When have you heard that in DC? Players outperforming their contract.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
very rare.
One last thing I'll say about the lineman, like you said, I think John Allen, first of all, got robbed. He should have been a first-team All-Pro last year. But that's why, and that Chase Young has the C on his chest. He's been put a lot of responsibility for what? Maybe we're rushing him. I mean, we're anointing him too quickly. Yeah. I think Jonathan Allen was allowed to thrive. He was under the radar. I mean, he's a D tackle versus a D end. So, I mean, like you said, a lot of Washington fans kind of learned to look the other way when you said he's going to be an elite lineman. And it's okay, though, because he's a defensive tackle. There's no pressure. And I think he thrived in that pressure. It thrived in the lack of pressure. But Young, we're announcing him, literally. People compared him last year to Myles Garrett. Keep in mind, Myles Garrett is on the pace for literally almost 20 sacks this year. He is the best edge rusher in the league. As long as he doesn't get hurt, I think we'll be a Hall of Famer. That's how high we put Chase Young's expectations. So then it just goes back to we need to calm down. We need to take the glasses off and realize, Chase Young's going to, like you said, Nati, he's going to be a solid player. He'll be a Pro Bowler, I think, too. Yeah. But, yeah.
to be fair though, like a lot of people were saying going into the draft that Chase Young, well, I said the generational talent part, but people were saying he was going to be the number 1 overall pick if it wasn't for Joe Burrow's insane year at LSU, right? That he led, the team to a national championship. So to be fair, I understand why the expectations like that were put on Chase Young, but obviously he's not that kind of player. I think he's an in-between between Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. But yeah, I again think, oh my gosh. I had to stop for a little bit. You see the donation?
Oh,
$20
wow.
from David DC. He had our first donation of $10 and now $20. Great job tonight. Nati and Noah, congrats on the 50th edition. Keep up the great work for Washington Football Team Nation. Hail to the Washington Football Team. We appreciate you, David
Thank
DC.
you.
Oh my gosh. First 2 donations on our live streams. Thank you so much. Wow, that actually that made me stop a little bit to just soak it in. But we appreciate that. And we're gonna continue to have a great show. I do want to get to obviously the matchup, right? Washington Football Team versus Denver Broncos before we get into some fantasy and NBA questions. Do you think that Jerry Jeudy's return for the Broncos will be a huge deal in this game? And can Washington's defense contain the weapons Denver has on offense? And Teddy Bridgewater, I believe, should also be ready to go as well.
Yeah, so I think we were talking about this before the call. But for unfortunate reality is this. The Judy's going to be a problem because he was, he was already kind of like healthy leading up to last week, but obviously they had him on IR. Oh, also I saw that. Appreciate that very much.
We appreciate you, Tony. That's a brother right there. Very good friend of the show. But go ahead.
Yeah. So the problem with that is that Jeudy is actually much healthier than is indicated from the media, because he actually was healthy last week, but he's on IR. You can't just hop off IR when you feel like it.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the secondary. We talk about the defensive line, but Washington Football Team secondary ranks 31st in the entire league when it comes to passing yards allowed, passing touchdowns, bottom 5, QB rating, bottom 5. And Teddy Bridgewater has been a decent player for the Broncos. And on top of that, the Broncos their momentum is there. The record doesn't indicate that, but they have had one of the toughest schedules this year. They've faced some good teams. I think that's really undervalued that team because they've been facing such strong opponents. Very true about the secondary. And then another thing. So Noah Fant is completely healthy, and their backup tight end, Albert Obowongam, I can't believe I got that right, Albert Obowongam, is also coming back from IR. So this is a fully healthy Broncos team versus a secondary that is literal Swiss cheese. So I'm really worried. I think Jeudy will make a huge impact because think about it now. They have Cortland Sutton. They have Jerry Jeudy. They have Tim Patrick, who played great as a number 2, and that's number 3. He's a 6'1" number 3 receiver. Who's going to match up? Who's going to match up on the Washington Football Team? Is going to match up with even Tim Patrick? Because you already know that Fuller and our main secondary unit is going to be really honing in on the Sutton-Jeudy connection. And on top of that, we got to worry about Noah Fant, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams. The only thing that we can hope for, like I said, Jeudy can be slowed down by one thing, the defensive line. Garrett Bowles, who was their all-pro left tackle last year, really struggling. The Broncos actually rank right below where the Washington Football Team is in terms of their offensive line. So that's the one weakness on their offense that I think the defense can exploit. But the problem is the secondary is terrible. And they have a lot of passing weapons. So we got to hope that, the defense either has to get a couple, like 3 or 4 sacks, honestly, 3 to 4 sacks, force Bridgewater to scramble around. Or otherwise we're gonna give up a lot of points. That's all. That's the main problem.
How about Washington's offense? You think they can put up points against Denver's defense?
Yeah, so I think you saw if anyone follows the Instagram, I posted the fantasy sleepers from Sporty Eye. Taylor Heineke, I think, what does that mean to translate to the real world? Amongst those four, I think that Seals Jones is gonna be an X factor because Logan Thomas still, I don't think he's still an IR. He's not gonna come back, and Seals Jones is a mismatch for the Broncos. Like you said, Von Miller is not healthy, nor is Bradley Chubb. They have no one that can match up with Seals Jones because Seals Jones. I mean, I remember on the Chiefs days, I was thinking, if Kelsey wasn't there, I think Seals Jones would be a great tight end. Here he is, has an opportunity, looks like a great tight end. So Seals Jones has mismatches all over that Broncos secondary because there's no linebacker that's going to be able to hold him. I'm telling you that much. And then on Heineke, I think he can play well without Von Miller, without Bradley Chubb. He can scramble around, do his thing. So the X factor is going to be Seals Jones because Terry is going to the Broncos second. It's the opposite. The Broncos defense is the opposite of the football team. Their secondary right now is Justin Simmons is the healthier, stronger unit. So they're going to obviously hone in on Terry, on our receivers, even McKissick. So it's going to come down to X factor, Seals Jones, X factor, Heineke. I think Gibson plays decently. So I think the offense has a chance. Amongst all the games, first of all, I think we should have won beat the Falcons. But also, this is the best chance for us to win that we've had all season. Like, we have to win this. I really think we have to win this. There's no reason we can or can't. Yes, I did mention there's a lot of options at the Broncos offense, but they are a very similar team to the Washington football team. They have injuries. They're mediocre all around. Yes, they face tougher opponents than us, but they're a very beatable team. Defensive line's got to step up. And then, like I said, we actually have enough weapons where I think that injured secondary cannot cover, injured defense cannot cover everyone.
Okay. Last but not least, who do you have winning this game?
Oh,
and final score too. Prediction.
All right, I'm gonna be honest. Live stream. I'm gonna be honest. DMVSportsZone Nation. I don't have a whole lot of faith in the Washington football team. I don't think they win. I think it's a winnable game. Yeah. I don't think they win. I think the final score is gonna be 21-17, 17-13, 17-14. A low scoring team. Dave got the right, similar score. It's gonna be a low scoring game because, like I said, the offensive line for the Broncos is terrible. With Garrett Bowles, their best player, the best left tackle, having a lot of injuries, performing poorly, not going to match up well. We could put Sweat there. We could put Chase Young there. So we have an opportunity for the defensive line to step up. But, just both teams just very meh. They get Judy back, but I think we get enough pressures where they cannot throw too far. So it will, I think, for me, unfortunately, Washington football team doesn't come out on top, but they'll keep it close. I think it'll be 21-17. At highest, 28-21. It'll be a 1 to 1.5, so one score, one field goal possession game. But I'm leaning towards Broncos, unfortunately, right now.
Okay. I think Washington's defense. I've been saying this the last couple of weeks. They've gotten better. I'm going to be objective here. They've gotten better. Their defensive line has gotten much better. Aaron Rodgers was. He even mentioned it on his interview with Pat McAfee, his weekly interview. Montez Sweat, Chase Young, the whole defense, Jonathan Allen, even Matt Ioannidis almost pushed Aaron Rodgers out of bounds on that potential safety play. I think the defense has gotten better. I think ultimately our defensive line, let me be more specific, our defensive line will ultimately get us to the W. I think we're going to win 24-20. And I think, this is the start of a stretch that is not as grueling as the stretch that we just had, right? Mm-hmm. And while I don't think, this team is going to win all their games, I think they can make a run, and I think hopefully, I'm not gonna say I think, hopefully this is the start of something big, right? Like last year we started off 2-5 or 2-6, I believe. So 2-7. I'm sorry, 2-7 to start the season, and then things started getting better with the schedule, and then things started to go uphill. Mm-hmm. And also at the start of that season, our defense was playing trash. So I'm not saying the exact same thing is going to happen. I'm just saying it's happened before. So let's see. Let's wait and see. But ultimately, again, 24-20, that's my final score. I think, Jerry Jeudy is going to have his. I think Cortland Sutton is going to have his. But I ultimately think that Washington's defensive line will force enough pressures, as you mentioned, will force enough pressures to make sure that Teddy Bridgewater is not slinging the ball all over the field. Although, this could just as easily be a get-right game for Teddy Bridgewater, much like it's been for other quarterbacks that we've had, right? Daniel Jones, some mediocre quarterbacks, even Matt Ryan at this stage in his career.
Matty Ice.
So, yeah, Matty Ice. But I do want to get to some other fun stuff. Let me ask you 2 fantasy questions, and then we'll get into the Wizards and Caps. So, fantasy. Who's your fantasy MVP of the season thus far? And also, yes, Dave and DC, we agree at this point. But yeah.
Wait, so you're talking about fantasy MVP for the entire league?
Fantasy MVP for the entire league, yes.
Derrick Henry. I didn't even need to wait. I want to put this in perspective, by the way. Nick Chubb, yes, he's been injured for a game or two. Nick Chubb is closer in rushing yards to Chuba Hubbard, who literally has only started 4 games, than he is to King Henry. Number 1, number 2. Derrick Henry has almost 800 rushing yards this year. I don't think people understand
about regression, huh?
Yeah. That's the thing. And he's breaking the mold. Big running backs are supposed to be broken. There's that meme, my table is broken or whatever. That's like my running. King Henry is not broken. He's getting better somehow. He's getting even better. And the thing that I really like about King Henry or Derrick Henry is that the Titans overall have gotten so much worse from last season. Their offensive line, actually ranked top 15 last year, is now in the bottom half. Dude, he's in the bottom half of the league. And everyone says running backs need linemen. And look at Taylor Lewan. Taylor Lewan is having a Garrett Bowles similar regression. Like Taylor Lewan literally apologized on Twitter for being terrible. He literally said, "I'm sorry to the city of Tennessee, or not the city, the state of Tennessee. I am not performing up to my expectations." And weirdly enough, it was A.J. Brown was affected for the most part, but Derrick Henry wasn't, because he's finding holes that he originally couldn't go through. He has them. That's the big knock on him coming out of college, was that he couldn't be a patient runner. He was north to south, explosive, but he couldn't, kick it out. He can't do he doesn't fit in a zone run scheme, but he's proving he can do that. And, he's the fantasy MVP by far. I mean, he's averaging literally 30 fantasy points a game. That's a breakout game for even a good running back. Like, to put in perspective, Aaron Jones has only had 2 games where he's gotten more than 25 fantasy points in full PPR. King Henry has gotten 25 plus in every single game. In any format, he's averaging 25 plus. That includes half PPR, which usually has lower scoring. I mean, there should be no debate. I think Derrick Henry should win. Forget about fantasy MVP. Derrick Henry should win NFL MVP. He is carrying the Titans. He is literally dragging them to the playoffs if they make it.
I personally have a weird take here, but I agree with you on the real life MVP. I think he should definitely win it. When I consider MVP, I also consider value and where you drafted that person in the draft. I think the MVP of the fantasy football season thus far is Cooper Kupp, bro. 800 plus. He leads the league in receiving yards, receptions, and touchdowns. 800 plus receiving yards. I don't know how many touchdowns. I think it's like 7, maybe 6 touchdowns.
He has, I think he has 8, actually. He has 8 touchdowns, I believe.
8.
That's insane.
Yeah. Through 7 games. I think Cooper Kupp, I had him in fantasy it was 2 seasons ago. So it was the 2018 season, right? First year of college. I remember I had him. I think I told you this story. I started off 5-0 in that league. It was our league, our Yahoo league, before you joined it. 5-0 in that league because of Cooper Kupp and his magical performances. Then things started to go downhill. Cooper Kupp started to put up 5-point games, 6-point games, 7-point games. Ultimately ended the season 8-5 in that fantasy league. You know the difference between that year and this year? He actually has a quarterback that can consistently throw him the ball.
Jared Goff is the GOAT. What are you talking about?
Matt Stafford. I was hyping this man's up so much. Unlike our good friend Corey from On the Warpath, I was hyping up Matt Stafford so much in the offseason. I thought he was going to be a great fit wherever he landed. And I mean, he landed in one of the best fits with Sean McVay in LA, potential Super Bowl contending team right there in their backyard as well. But Cooper Kupp is my fantasy MVP because of the production that he's put up, also where he was drafted. He was not drafted as a top 5 receiver in fantasy, even, I mean, maybe top 10 receiver, but either way, it was like 3rd, 4th, 5th round when you got Cooper Kupp, right, for most people. So I would definitely say him. Although Derrick Henry, I think, again, real life MVP. I do want to ask you very shortly, very quickly here, who are your and you mentioned this on the Instagram post, but on video, fantasy studs, whatever you want to say about this Washington versus Denver matchup. Who should people put in their lineups?
Yeah. So for the Washington football team, so the Ravens have a bye week, so I don't have any Ravens. They're the more intriguing fantasy team, let's be real here. But for the Washington football team, I really believe that, for your sleepers, you're going to have Seals Jones, a tight end. He will have a good game. He has a safe floor, and his score plus, Sport AI score plus projects him in the top 10 at his position, which is valuable because there's a lot of bye weeks for tight ends. Also, tight end position is trash, so you could take anything. And Seals Jones is a valuable actual contributing tight end. Taylor Heineke, I think, is going to be a sleeper as well. In super flex leagues or 2 QB leagues, really useful because his floor is so safe because he runs around like a chicken, like with his head cut off sometimes. But that results in some decent stats. Last game he got almost 90 yards on the ground just running around, which is crazy how that accumulates, but it kind of works sometimes. So he's a sleeper. Antonio Gibson, I believe, is a sleeper as well. And the only star, I think Terry does shine in this matchup. I think that he has a proven game for himself. His score plus projects pretty well, actually. But by pretty well, I mean, he's still going to be, still barely cracks the top 20 at his position, which in Washington football team standards is a star because everybody else is just a sleeper. So those are the major players to take a look for this weekend.
Appreciate that. And, bro, I think the Wizards are legit, bro. They're leading right now 115, 106. I'm gonna say it on here. I said it on Instagram, and I'm gonna say it on Twitter after this game. Boy, was I wrong. The Wizards are very good, guys. They're literally leading the Hawks 115, 106.
Without Dinwiddie,
another
too.
Great team. They're playing against another great team without. Bradley Beal's playing, Kyle Kuzma's playing, Harrell's playing, KCP. Aaron Holiday's the starting point guard tonight. Spencer Dinwiddie's not playing. And they're still beating the Hawks. And I think the Hawks are fully loaded. Yep, I think they're fully healthy right now.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on the Wizards and the Caps, bro?
Oh, my. I know for anyone who saw the video posted for the Fantasy Perspective on Tuesday, I'm super excited for both teams. I think there's not a lot to say. I'm going to start with the Capitals first because there's not as much to say about them. The only thing that's intriguing right now, main storyline, Vita Vanacek, Ilya Samsonov, who will be the starter. They're doing a 1A, 1B, and it looked like Vanacek ran away with the job, but then Samsonov came in and won a couple games. The Capitals are a good team overall. Even if they give up a ton of goals, still going to get a lot of dubs. So that's the storyline to watch. Nick Jensen, some of these other new guys that the Capitals have. McConnor, as well as Lafayette. Both of them are young players that I think are contribute a lot to this team. And then Ovechkin. Oh my God, Ovechkin is immortal. I'm telling you right now.
About to be reach that record, hopefully.
I think he will. I mean, he's on pace right now for 45 goals this year. Keep in mind, he is 35. He's literally the LeBron of the NHL. Glad to say he's a DC guy. So the projections for the Capitals, I think they're going to do really good this year. I mean, they never kind of do bad. The only thing is the playoffs. They disappointing loss last year to the Islanders. Oh my goodness,
bro! It's looking more like 2018 was an aberration when it comes to their playoff performance.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but we'll see. I mean, we're in a weird one last thing about the Capitals. Like I said, the goaltending battle are with 2 goalies that are under 23. And for those not familiar with the Capitals or hockey as much, The goaltending is the slowest position to reach your prime. Most goalies don't reach their prime until they're 27, 28. And these guys are 4 or 5 years off their prime, and they're battling right now for the starting goalie job. So, but that's the thing. We're in a weird timeline because Ovechkin doesn't have 6 years left. Backstrom doesn't have 6 years. Carlson doesn't have 6 years. So we're gonna have to hope. I think Vanacek wins the battle. I think he's much more of a poised goaltender, and he's a lot more consistent. So if you can play at even a decent level, I think we make a deep run into the playoffs. I don't think we make the mistakes we did last year. We're way deeper this year. Very balanced defensively as well. So yeah, I think the outlook for the Capitals, we'll finish top 2 in the Metropolitan, and I think we make at least the semifinals this year.
Okay.
And then
Wizards.
the Wizards.
Sorry, I saw the score. I was like, okay, that's actually kind of surprising. But no, the Wizards are for real. And with that, we're for real. You guys are for real as well. Thank you guys so much for joining. Bro, we had a $20 donation from Dave in DC off a $10 donation in our live stream a couple of weeks back, our first one while we were monetized. Protect Sports Network. I mean, the Brody, he's been on here several times on these live streams. Thank you so much. Everybody who joined, the Hawk TV, Awesomeness Sports, and I know everybody's watching the Wizards game too, so I understand the views and stuff. But Patrick West, Celtics are a real team, yes, and we beat them, so the Wizards are very good by default. Jared Sports at the very beginning. Thank you guys so much for joining. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe to DMVSportsZone channel. We try to post our content on here as much as possible. Also, go follow our Twitter page at DMVSportsZone, Instagram page, all lowercase DMVSportsZone. Post great content on there as well. Noah, great content creator on this channel. Great creator of fantasy analytics. Sport AI, CEO of Sport AI. Thank you, Noah, so much for joining, bro. And do you want to plug your company? I think I just want to say thank you for having me on to the live stream.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Protect. Thank you, everybody who's on the live stream. I hope you guys enjoyed the information. We try to be as unbiased and analytical as possible, and that's very similar to what we do here at Sport AI, democratizing the fantasy sports analytics process through the power of mobile app. We launched on October 25th with our private beta. We'll be in public. We'll go public November 5th. Users are very excited. So if you want, right now we've got NFL and NBA, but obviously we're working on the NHL and baseball very soon. So keep an eye out for the updates, and sportai.io is our landing page to learn more information about that. But of course, I always have it in the bio for the fantasy videos. So I hope you guys find that useful.
For sure. Thank you so much once again. And yes, Dan Snyder is a clown. Peace out, guys.